Hello, hello, hello.
How are you guys? Nice to be back again. We are the Lume Plotters.
Yep.
Still plotting away.
Absolutely.
And how are you, Ralph?
I am very good. And yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm enjoying, for those of you listening, we have some new audio equipment, and that's always a fun thing for us. I personally was never into audio equipment, but Ralph has converted me to some level. So I got a new microphone, some headphones. So hopefully you can hear the clarity and the beauty of my voice.
Yeah, you can definitely hear that because you have a German headphone, right?
Yes, of course. My microphone is made in Australia. My headphones are made in Germany.
See, there you go.
So always good, always good stuff. So, but by the way, Ralph has both of the things that I bought as well. So I just copied him. So
we are brothers here, the Lume Plotter brothers. Yeah. And having that out of the way, what are you wearing on your wrist?
We're going straight into it.
Yes, we have to.
I am wearing today my JLC Reverso. This is the medium size with the small seconds. And I have it on a very nice saddle leather strap, the dark brown, medium brown saddle leather strap. So still relatively new, according to when I saw the guys at JLC that came for the exhibit, the Stellar Odyssey exhibit in Dubai. The watchmakers commented that it was still too shiny and too polished. So apparently I need to wear it more and scratch it up a little bit.
Yes. If it's shiny and oily, you don't want
exactly.
that.
No. You want it to be warm.
A bit more rough.
And what about you, Ralph? What are you wearing?
Well, my watch definitely is roughed up already.
Why don't you tell them about the story that happened yesterday?
Yeah, it's my Pelagos 39. And yeah, it's very roughed up. It has already so many scratches on the bracelet, and especially on the clasp. Yeah, yesterday it just decided to stop for no reason. I had no idea why, and it wouldn't work. I wound it up more. I shook it. I stopped it. I mean, pulled out the crown, set the time differently, put it back in, shook it again, and was dead. It would not move. The second hand would not move. It didn't tick. I listened to it as well. It was just deciding to be dead. So I thought, great, let me go to the basement, get my warranty card, because tomorrow I will drop it at the boutique and have it, sent in for warranty, and have to live a few months without my watch, most likely. So I came back from the basement with my warranty card. Lo and behold, the watch worked. And so since then, it just keeps perfect time. So I'm just like, what was that? Did I imagine it? Was it what? Why?
But the funny thing is, the same exact thing happened to my Black Bay 58. Excuse me. So it just randomly stopped working. I was swimming. It just stopped. And I did the same thing. I knocked it. I did everything. Nothing. And then 1 second to the next, it just started ticking again. And I had that watch for about a year and never had an issue. This was week 1. So I do have a theory about this, that there might be some kind of, we know the first tick of the second hand, there's a lot of initial momentum or inertia that it has to overcome to start moving. So It takes a good amount of effort for a watch to start ticking, much more so than if it's already ticking. So I'm thinking maybe because it's new, the watch is so new, there's an excess of lubrication in the movement. And that, remember, excess lubricant, if it's very sticky, if it's very thick, viscous, then that could potentially act as a kind of glue as well.
Yeah, the thing is, what I don't understand is that it actually already was ticking when I was going out for a walk, right? So that's the thing. And then you move your hands and usually charges even more. So I cannot explain it. It's still a mystery to me. But the good thing is it decided to work again. So maybe the threat of it being brought to the boutique and having to be probably shipped somewhere, did the job of convincing the watch to work again. Saying, okay,
scaring some life into
it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's that.
All right.
So, yeah.
So what are we talking about today, Ralph? What is the hot topic for the day?
Today we are talking about fashion watches.
Not necessarily fashion watches, but
fashionable watches
and watches, fashionable watches. Any correlation between the form of a watch versus the function of a watch?
And also the conceptions of what is a fashion watch, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Generally, I think the accepted way of thinking about a fashion watch is a watch made by a fashion house.
Yes.
That is not particularly exciting from an horological perspective. It's just a designed watch by a fashion house that looks cool, but doesn't necessarily have any horological value. Mostly driven by cheap quartz watches. Looks nice, but from a horological perspective, pretty useless. And I think that's what a lot of fashion watches used to be and still are. So examples, for example, is Burberry watches.
Yeah.
And most of the Gucci watches, and like the Michael Kors, the
Daniel Wellington's
movements.
I mean, and these are not even actually
Filippo Loretti. Yeah.
These are not fashion houses. These are, kind of trying to be watch companies, but we still lump them into the category of fashion watches because they are there to look good as opposed to do anything horologically significant. But the big issue here now is that we are seeing a lot of fashion houses actually moving into the real horological space. So we had this with Chanel. They made the J12. We had this with Louis Vuitton. We had this with a number of other brands. Cartier can be kind of, you could look at Cartier in the same way.
Yeah, as a jewelry house starting to make watches, you can end up in the exact same way. Let's say Boucheron, for example. Boucheron makes certain watches that are run by off-the-shelf movements, but they look pretty much amazing from a jewelry perspective because these guys know what they're doing when it comes to bracelets and just decoration and
Tiffany
stones and all
as well does the same thing.
But yeah, from an horological perspective, off-the-shelf movements, well, it's like any other micro brand, so to say, right? It's not necessarily very, very exciting from an horological perspective. Talking about Chanel, I think Chanel is a great example because not only are they started with watches relatively late in their game. They started the same way, beautifully designed things. They do a lot of jewelry too. And then started with off-the-shelf movements. Eventually moved away from that, have their own manufacturer. They have
They have they're using Tudor's.
They use Kinesi. They have a part shareholder. I think they own 20-25% of Kinesi. Tudor and Rolex still have the majority ownership of Kinesi, but they have a big part of that as well, a quarter. And they also own 20% or 25% of FP Journe, which, well, is one of the best watchmakers alive. So I guess there is a lot of knowledge about movements. And now their new movements, the J12 in different variations, 12.1, 12.2, all Kinesi made, or manufacture movements, specifically made for Chanel. And one of them is actually even the smaller one that is not even in any other watch yet. The one for the smaller 31 millimeters and 33 millimeters J12s. That has not yet been put in any other movement from that Kinesi is supplying. So the small ones. So there's lots of cool stuff happening. All of them are, of course, chronometer certified. They might in the future go even meters. Who knows, right?
Yep. Well, I mean, that's what Tudor's doing with their Kinesi movements.
But maybe they use that to differentiate a bit from the other brands that they're supplying with movements.
Yeah.
This all comes back from this old Swatch and ITA group that was supposed to stop supplying third parties with their movements or wanted to. And then it was back and forth with the whole Comco agency, the anti-competitive, the what is it? The regulation authority.
The antitrust laws.
Yeah, just to make sure that everybody gets their movement. Yeah. The idea was actually quite interesting when Nicholas Hayek Sr. Said, we want other brands to start innovating again. Everybody just takes our ETA movements and plonks them in watches and then even claims they're in-house. While they're completely not. They buy that just, 90% of the parts from us and then just make a rotor and saying it's their own movement. We want to stop that. We want them to start making their own movements again. And that's why we'll stop supplying them. And then it went back and forth and a whole strategy changed and everything this is a different episode, I guess. But nowadays we have more focus now from the companies that take watchmaking serious and they want to charge high prices, you cannot do this with an off-the-shelf movement and just putting a brand name on.
Yep.
Especially not if you're a fashion house like Chanel or Hermes. They now have to do their own thing. So Chanel has their own manufacture where they do even tourbillons and very complicated movements. So they can do that now. They have built this up over the years. Same with Hermes. They have their own watchmaking factory. They build their own movements. They have designed their first, let's say, the workhouse movement that is in the H08 and in the dressage and some other models. They have designed this with Val-Fleurier. No, not
Val-Fleurier.
Vaucher. Sorry. Was it Vaucher? Not Val-Fleurier.
I thought it was Val-Fleurier.
Val-Fleurier is
Richemont Group. But,
exactly. No. It's Vaucher. From, Vaucher, which is coming from Parmigiani Fleurier. Vaucher is entangled with them. So that's where they bought
the reason I think
design.
It's Val-Fleurier, and then correct us if it's wrong, is because they also use Piaget movements. And Piaget, once again, is Richemont.
Hermes doesn't use Piaget movements.
Yes, they do. In the H01, I believe it's called the Thin, they're using a off-the-shelf Piaget movement.
But this was Vaucher, because Hermes is also making the straps for Parmigiani Fleurier, and there's an investment. I think Hermes owns a specific part in Vaucher. We can just do that, Vaucher, Hermes, and we just Google this live for you, so we are not telling anything wrong.
Exactly. We try to.
Yeah. The Hermes group founded in Yeah.
Vaucher is their exclusive calibers.
Yeah.
So they think they're doing all of it all in one.
Yeah, I think the Piaget is probably behind them now that they are working with Vaucher, because they have an alliance exactly that was formed in 2009 already. So anyhow, Hermes have their own manufacturer as well. They do a lot of different things there. Then they have Maître du Temps with Louis Vuitton, for example, that they have built their own lab. Even though the LVMH group has their own movement manufacturer, right? As you said before, they are sharing across brands. You see very often materials shared there between, let's say, Zenith and Hublot and other people when they work with different materials and then share their expertise there. But even Louis Vuitton as a fashion brand has now built up has bought in that expertise with Maître du Temps to make these amazing watches. You saw the Carpe Diem, the one with the snake that goes through the skull,
yes.
and then snakes around and sizzles and opens up the skull to show the message.
No.
Amazing things, and they can do also these. Maître du Temps is two watchmakers that are extremely knowledgeable.
I'm still Googling. I apologize. So the Hermes Slim de Hermes, which was in 2018, 2019, that one had a Piaget movement.
Oh, okay.
But for the rest of them, so once again, at that time, I think they were using the Val-Fleurier. But now, from what I see, is they are using the Vaucher, which is also Fleurier, in Fleurier, or from Fleurier.
Correct.
Yes. So we do tend to confuse things in the Fleurier region. It's not all Parmigiani and other cheeses. So.
Yeah, Appenzeller.
All right. So
that's what I think where most of these fashion brands that are trying to play in that game, they see, okay, watches is a big business. I mean, from a fashion perspective, if you look at Chanel or Louis Vuitton, I don't think they make a significant, high percentage amount of money with watches yet, but there is certainly a growing market for it.
Yep.
So if you look at Louis Vuitton, they always had watches. I looked at a few of them a couple of years back.
But they were, off-the-shelf quartz watches, nothing spectacularly special sometimes.
They had these world timers and stuff.
They looked cool, though. They were very Louis Vuitton.
Yeah, that were not bad. All of these, what are they called? Tambour? The tambour.
Yeah, the tambours.
time case. The world timer, I looked at that because that's a mechanical movement. I think it's a 2892 with some modules on top, not high watchmaking either, but it was quite okay. But I think now they're moving into this realm of, we want to show what we can do. And if you see their top of the range movements that won GPHG awards and all of these, Oscars of the watch world, that's high watchmaking. There's no question about it. Mm-hmm. What they are doing is absolutely haute horologerie. And they have transcended or moved away from just a cheap fashion watch. Even Gucci, I've seen this recently in a couple of industry magazines, watchmaking magazines, where they actually have double spreads and saying like, we are now going into haute horology. We have the 25H movement, self-developed. We are going and doing good things now. But the majority of Gucci movements is still looking nice, but is a fashion. Yeah. It's for me, the embodiment of a fashion watch, where Gucci was left behind. I mean, the others moved on to high horology and they were just...
But here, I always have this issue with Gucci is because... when you look at Gucci's main competitors, right? Louis Vuitton, actually Prada also doesn't do anything. So that's another one that we would say has been left behind. But I don't think they have really done anything watch related that I'm aware of.
No, the only thing I remember Prada doing was cooperating with Luna Rossa.
Oh, right? Yes, they did the Luna Rossa one.
But it's Panerai. It's not.
Yeah, it's Panerai, and it just says the Luna Rossa with the Prada stripe down the side of it.
They had the same with Hublot. They had a Luna Rossa Hublot as well. So I think they're just cooperating with a sailing inventor.
Okay as well, right? That's one way to do it. You're not going to do anything better than the big companies. So why not just pair with them and do something? So, for instance, Hermes did not need to make watches. They could have cooperated with other watchmakers by making straps, which they did.
Yeah, and they also, since I think around 100 years, they make watches, but they usually cooperated with watchmaking companies and just gave them a bit of an MS twist.
Exactly. So the double tour straps and things like this.
Apple Watch. There's an MS Apple Watch.
Yes.
There you go.
Exactly, which I still think is pretty cool.
And I think they probably sell a lot of them.
Oh, yeah. I think that's one of their biggest sellers.
If you think about volume, right? I mean, that's different. I mean, the Apple Watch makes, as we know, more revenue, the Apple Watch alone, than the entire Swiss watch industry, which is insane if you think about it. Yeah. Anyhow, but it's fashion watches in itself. I mean, I was guilty. I had, the Armani watches. Armani, we should mention. Oh, these are also
I think I had the Armani Exchange watch or whatever it was.
Yeah, me too.
Mine was a chronograph. However, the chronograph hands, the subdials, were actually just glued on and they did nothing.
I know. No, sometimes you have these that look like a chronograph and they just set the day of the week.
And for me, it did nothing. It was glued on and it had pushers that did nothing. Armani Exchange.
Yeah, I know that they have these fashion brands have actually done the same as they sometimes did with sunglasses. They basically just licensed their name to a company that makes sunglasses and said like, hey, you can have our name, whatever, Prada, and yet you make sunglasses in our name.
But this is still what's going on to this day almost. I mean,
they're produced, but they have now, I think, a more say in how the brand is used and how the designs are done. But back in the days, it was just like Burberry, for example. They are not making their own watches. They have given the right to make Burberry watches to somebody. I think the Fossil Group, Movado or something, whatever. I think. And they are just doing this, right? So they have no control anymore about it.
So okay, let's move one step forward here. So I'm going to name a few watch brands. And you tell me if you think these are fashion watch brands or if they're actual.
So the next thing
horology.
Is okay, but I mean, the next thing is actually, what if a watch becomes fashionable?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
Quickly, we'll go through the history, at least of our generation, of what was popular. Mm-hmm. So first, Swatch, fashion or more?
I think the entire idea of Swatch was to be a fashion watch.
Exactly.
That's just like and you can change it every day.
But now,
non-serviceable movement. It's a fire and forget.
So once again, Swatch, most people think it stands for Swiss watch. It doesn't. It stands for second watch, which
Right.
was the original intention of swatches, that you could match it with your pants that day or your shirt that day. And
Yeah, because the idea that you have actually more than one watch is also something that wasn't the case back then.
Yeah,
People just had a watch. And
exactly. Unless you are, some king or queen that was collecting, pocket watches. And then because I did hear that there was a lot of royalty and presidents, famous people that did collect pocket watches and things like that.
Yeah.
Winston Churchill was a notorious watch collector.
Oh, right. Okay. I didn't know that.
Apparently I heard a story very interesting that he had one of his watches stolen by at the time the king of Egypt. The king of Egypt at the time was a kleptomaniac, but also the king of Egypt. And so apparently he stole the watch while they were in a meeting. It was a pocket watch.
Okay.
It was a Blancpain, and then returned it to him the next day. So interesting.
Well, we have to say kleptomania is a sickness. It's something that you obviously don't do by choice.
But it's still a funny story that somebody stole Winston Churchill's Blancpain.
That's
and it was
true.
royalty, and then he returned it the next day. So I heard that story this morning from Joe Thompson, who is
right.
a big watch.
Joe Thompson, where did you hear that? Because I have not read anything from him since he left Houdini.
No, this is old.
It's old.
I was listening to an old podcast with Joe Thompson.
All right.
Actually, no, I did hear some stuff about him recently.
I loved his articles. Somehow
he was
disappeared.
He did some talks about the new Watches and Wonders.
No. Okay.
And this year he was at Watches and Wonders, and he was talking about that.
Wow.
About what's to come and things like this. But it was a short, brief stint on the Hodinky Radio podcast.
Okay.
But this one was an older one. If you haven't listened to Hodinky Radio's Joe Thompson episode, I think it's 2019 or so, he has some ridiculously interesting stories.
Yes. One of the few people who ever interviewed a Rolex CEO.
Yes, absolutely. And the
has
only reason
access.
Why did he interview the Rolex CEO? Do you know the reason behind it?
Yeah, I heard it, but I forgot.
So apparently what had happened was he was publishing for a big jewelry magazine at the time. This was in the 80s, early 90s. And apparently Zales, which is one of the largest American jewelry stores, went bankrupt. And of course, they were a Rolex AD. And there was some article that they were saying that basically Rolex was losing 300 million Swiss francs at the time because they had lent Zale, I think it was Zales, all of these watches. And then, of course, Zales goes bankrupt. There's a bankruptcy hearing. They had to sell off their assets, which at the time, those watches were classified as their assets. In fact, they were owed to Rolex because they were on loan. But
yeah, that's a problem with bankruptcy. There's certain assets that you have that can be liquidated, and then you have certain creditors like Rolex who says like, but
those are our stuff.
This is the value of a loan, basically. Yeah. But then you have to step back to everybody who has.
What happened was basically this all came down to the CEO, then Rolex CEO's head, saying that he was at fault. He shouldn't have lent $300 million or Swiss francs of watches to Zales. Yeah. And basically he wrote an article saying that he's going to be demoted. And before we know it, he's going to end up at some jewelry store in Nigeria. And he said, here's the article.
Okay.
You're more than welcome to comment. Otherwise, if I don't hear from you by Monday, it's going live.
Right.
And this was, of course, a big prestigious jewelry magazine at the time. And he gets a call from the Rolex CEO saying, let's sit down and talk. And that was the first time a Rolex CEO was interviewed.
And probably the last time, I guess. It's amazing how secrecy they are, the secrecy that they have, and there's this aura around them not to give any press interviews, just feed press releases. And that's it, basically. There's no...
Yeah. He was just saying it's really funny because nobody spoke the truth about Rolex. The fact that this 300 million Swiss franc loss was nowhere to be seen anywhere in the world, right? Nobody knew about it except for Joe Thompson at the time.
Right.
And hence, because he apparently had connections to the bankruptcy attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
So they were chatting about it. And basically, Rolex was still pumping out stuff and telling everybody the world is great and everything's awesome. And on the backside, this could have been a huge PR debacle for Rolex.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, that aside, going back. So you say
Swatch watches are fashion watches.
Okay, I'm going to give you another one.
Mm-hmm.
Movado.
Fashion watch.
What if we go back in time?
Wasn't.
So you're saying that
But since the museum watch was basically the one hit watch that I'm still aware of.
Yeah.
And everything that came afterwards, fashion watch.
Yeah. But the museum watch is in my opinion, one of the greatest designs.
Design-wise, Mondane is also part of Movado Group, right?
I believe so, yeah. Mondane also is a one watch. But Mondane was not a watch company to begin with. It was a clock company.
Yes, right? But they did the railway watches. And they're so iconic as well.
Yeah, it is a very iconic design.
Lovely watches. But yeah, watchmaking-wise.
But I mean, they had the Minerva movements from back in the day, which now was bought by Mont Blanc.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they took the heritage from Movado and put it into Mont Blanc, which is interesting. But there was heritage there.
Technically, Richemont bought them and just gave them to Mont Blanc to say, like, okay, you are now the curator of Minerva. Of Minerva. Do something with it.
Yep. Yeah. So I don't know at the time if Minerva was producing movements for Movado or if Movado owned Minerva or what the situation was. I'm assuming it was they were just producing the movements for Movado, but they had horological significant pieces at the time.
I think these companies that are Chinese to us, right? They were called actually chainist. Yeah, you were a chainist in the Swiss watch industry means that you are part of the production supply chain. Exactly. You are just doing a specific thing and you're doing it extremely well. Mm-hmm. Like your Gay Frere,
the bracelets. The Gay Frere bracelets.
Who was bought by Rolex eventually.
The Rolex did this to all of their supply chain, right? They bought them.
Gay Frere did, bracelets for everybody. The first Nautilus, the first Royal Oak, they all went there to Gay Frere and
crazy.
Said, we want to do this.
You're so good at making bracelets.
Can you do this, right? And they said, well, we can, right? They never said, no, we can't, because they were the best in making any kind of bracelets.
So, okay.
Anyhow. But yeah.
You want to, let's go on. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what about Timex?
Yeah, Timex, again, unfortunately, fashion watch, majority, definitely.
You think so? Because, to me, Timex makes cheap watches.
It's a tradition. That's a funny thing. It's not a fashion house at all.
No.
It's a pure watch company.
Exactly.
But I still think maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I should retract this because it's a watch brand.
First and foremost.
That does what the Swiss watch brands did forever. It just designs watches, has somebody make the movements, have somebody else make their cases and the bracelets. They usually buy it from outside, assemble it maybe, or even assemble some of the things themselves because Timex is big. Yeah. They have a lot. They're doing a lot of good stuff. They're doing a lot of nice designed watches as well. I think I like Timex. Timex is not a bad brand, but maybe I should separate this from fashion watches coming from a fashion house. Definitely not.
No, we're saying fashion watch. We're saying a company that makes fashion watches.
Yeah, but it's not a high horology brand for sure. So it's a watch brand that
makes
fashion watches. Yeah,
so I would say the same goes for Fossil.
Yeah, definitely.
So they're doing the same exact thing.
Guess,
as well as Daniel Wellington, these kinds.
Yeah, Daniel Wellingtons. I think the Daniel Wellingtons, and they are now part of the Citizen Group, by the way, right? They were bought. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's different. And the Citizen Group also owns Frédéric Constant and some other really high-end watchmakers in Switzerland. Yeah. So it's weird, but I think Daniel Wellington is the embodiment of like the dropship watches, basically.
Yeah.
You go to AliExpress, you like a good design, you ask them to produce 50,000 of them and put your logo on it, and that's what you get.
And there was nothing specifically special. I have to say that Daniel Wellington was the first, or one of the first watch brands, to my knowledge, that was putting NATO straps in the public eye.
Right.
And I thought that was cool.
Yeah,
because they were using not just single pass NATOs, they were using proper NATOs. And
what I think did the good thing that came out of Daniel Wellington is that generally wristwatches had more audience.
Yeah.
It brought a lot of people back into wearing.
It was like the Swatch at the time, right? You
Not a
had nothing to do
smartwatch,
with
yeah.
a watch, and then you saw this and you said, wow, okay, I'll get one of those.
Mm.
So this is an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go Orient.
Yeah, for me, Orient is they make their own movements.
Kind of. I think they borrow a lot from Seiko.
Yeah.
Their Seiko group.
Yeah. Yeah, to a certain extent, there's Seiko apps and whatever. We discussed this previously.
They're a different branch of Seiko, but they're still Seiko.
Check this out. But yeah, they're not part of Seiko watches, but they're part of Seiko.
Seiko
Epson, yeah, and all of this stuff. But I think they make their own. The designs or the initial movements are part of Seiko designs, I guess. But I think they are doing a lot themselves. I mean, they still have, most of their watches have no, what do you call it? I mean, the ones that I had, a bit older, they don't have a hacking seconds and all of these things. They were just terribly reliable. These Orient watches were very well made for the money that they cost. The cases were lovely, bracelets were okay for the money, and the movements were indestructible. Not the most precise, but my God, they would just work. And these are like movements where you really take it from your watch box when it's dead. You take it, you put it on your arm, and it already starts ticking.
Yeah. So my Seiko did this.
So efficient. I don't know how.
I don't know how, because you can't do that with a Rolex, for instance, right?
No,
you can
no.
you can shake it all you want. It's never going to start. You have to wind it. Okay, I'm going to give you one more, and we're truly
Orient is not a
fashion. Okay, we're going to start blurring the lines here between what is horology and what we consider fashion. And I could argue this either way, but I'm going to say Hamilton.
Yeah. Lots of history. I mean, being the original.
By that logic, Movado also had lots of history.
Yeah, true.
So did Timex.
But what are they now? I mean, now is Hamilton, they have certain movements that they're, like the H20, H50, but it's all part of the same group.
It's all ETA.
It's a group movement, basically, right?
Yeah.
So it's all
so they don't make their own movements.
It's a Swatch group movement that might have specific things that are unique to Hamilton, or maybe not, who knows. But these are like little changes, I guess. They make fashionable watches, for sure.
But this is kind of what one of my issues with them is all they do is make reissues of things that they had in the past when they were in the 60s, an American company, right? Field watches.
I really, really like their Pulsar.
And then the reissues of the Pulsar, these are things that in the time, 60s, 70s and earlier, they were immensely famous.
Yes, absolutely.
And now they contribute, and this is one of my issues with them. And a lot of other brands that do the same thing is they have no forward momentum. It's everything they do is looking backwards. And there's a couple brands that do this, that I feel do this too much. Hamilton, Longines, and we could argue Oris. However, Oris with their new movement, with their Pro Pilot X and those ranges, I mean, those are purely futuristic watches. And they have the Aquis, which is also a futuristic watch. So Oris balances. They do a retro as well as a new type of watch. But Hamilton and Longines, I don't think they do anything that's modern.
But I think, isn't that exactly what we as watch collectors always want? That watches are actually, I mean, Longines, for example, they have their new lines, the Conquest and Hydro Conquest and all of the stuff.
So I guess you're right. They do. Okay, but let's go to Hamilton.
But let's stay with Longines for a second. Then they have the Spirit line, which is, of course, somehow inspired. Then they have the sector dials and other things that they do. The Master Collection is unique, but also classic designs. But on the other hand, I think we as watch collectors usually think, let's say, the whole Corvette 911 comparison, right? Every new production generation of the Corvette looks sometimes fundamentally different from the one before it. It's very hard to sometimes tell somebody who's not into cars, these are basically the same model. It's a Corvette, and that is a Corvette. And you think about it, it looks nothing like this. It looks nothing like it, right? In the 50s Corvette towards today. But if you show somebody a 50s 911 and today's 911, everybody will say, well, it's a 911.
It's a Submariner.
Exactly. So that's my point. We actually want companies to just have iconic watches, because we always ask, what does this brand stand for? What is their one watch that identifies the brand?
Correct.
For Omega, it's the Speedmaster, because also there, the Seamaster is something that maybe has changed a bit too much.
The
over
Seamaster
time.
is a very big umbrella term, unfortunately.
Yeah. Rolex, they have their lines very clearly. The Datejust, probably the most iconic design with the fluted bezel. That what everybody still thinks, that's how a Rolex looks, right? When you want to do one. For dive watches, yes, the Submariner is probably that one that comes to mind. Other watch brands have a hard time because they don't have this kind of.
Well, Hamilton has the khaki.
Yeah, and I think that's good.
Yeah.
That's where I think the khaki is something where you would say that's their icon.
So is it fashion or is it horology? Because once again, Hamilton does not have a single revolutionary new piece, nor do they make their own movements, as far as I know.
Yeah, but as an example, when they did the Pulsar, right, the new
in 1970.
No, I mean the re-edition, which was a fantastic watch. I had it. I needed to sell it recently, but it went to a good home, so everything is fine. But the case was extremely nicely done, very solid. The bracelet was great.
It reminds me of the Girard Perregaux.
It had a sapphire case.
Yeah.
Sapphire
crystal.
Big, fat sapphire crystal on top. It had a 2-layer display. It had an OLED display and an LED display. So when you press the button, it would light up the LEDs, like in the classic old one, where it's very bright.
But at the same time, the other one would stay lit.
Exactly. And they were like sandwiched, right, in between. And I think, wow, this is amazing technology. Somebody must have done that, because I've never seen that before.
Yep.
And I've not seen that since. They're still making this watch. So I think they do certain innovations as well. So I would sort of call them,
in the middle.
In the middle, yeah.
Okay.
I think their watches are fashion driven to a certain extent. Well, not fashion driven, but watch fashion driven.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they have at least the history. I mean, they have used these kind of movements before. They haven't. Have they done Hamilton pocket watches? Yeah, they have had a couple of their own movements. But even if you look at pocket watches of the old times, and you open the back, right, they all look the same.
Because they were buying movements. A lot of them were sourcing parts from others.
I have looked at some H. Moser pocket watches from 1900s and some other from Zenith and from other brands, and they all have the same movement, more or less, the same design.
So, by the way, speaking of Moser, a friend of mine, a Russian friend of mine, sent me an old 1950s Moser advertisement. It was a poster or whatever, some article. And it said, he translated it for me. It said, a true comrade would wear a Moser. There's a picture of a Moser watch.
Well, they have, the company moved actually from Switzerland to St. Petersburg for a while, right?
Exactly. It was a Russian heritage originally, and then they were Russian, Swiss owners.
And then they were dormant for some time until the Milan
brothers
family
picked it up. But it's the same family. Milan family is related to the Moser family.
All right. Good.
So this is still within their...
That's very nice to learn.
It is. I remember them talking about how they were, I think, great-grandfather was.
I always have sometimes these feelings when a watch name is resurrected, right? I mean, Blancpain was resurrected, but the FPG was still there. And they owned the brand, and they still made movements, right? So it was funny because Blancpain bought FPG, then FPG basically owned Blancpain. It was weird over the time. But then Jean-Claude Biver bought Blancpain as a brand,
$20,000 for the name.
And then restarted that.
I think that has to be the bargain of the century.
Yeah, but I guess you did a good job there. But at least it's all still the same buildings, right?
Yeah.
Now everything is back exactly the way it was back then, right? So I think that's great. But then you have brands like Chapek, and you have brands like what was the other one that recently? Moritz Grossmann, for example. Mm-hmm. It's a brand that was it's a great name in watchmaking, Moritz Grossmann, but the people who run Moritz Grossmann or Chapek have no connection to Chapek or Moritz Grossmann.
Yeah.
It's just a name.
And the Chapek people specifically, they love playing into this name. Like, oh, it was Patek Philippe and Chapek.
Correct.
And so, this once again has nothing to do with, yes, it was, but.
And Chapek now is also weird from Chapek just a couple of years ago, because they started on Kickstarter, I think, right, with Chapek. And you think, that was a bit odd at the time. And I still had, for me, it's just a taste of, this is a bit weird.
When Kickstarter, these companies coming in on Kickstarter, I always have the sour taste in my mouth. Like, eesh. Oh.
But look at where they are now. I mean, easily on a same level of some really high horology brands. And
I would put them right there with Moser, probably, around that category. And
it's pretty scary of how well they have done. I mean, very well managed. Moritz Grossmann as well. While they have taken that name as an inspiration, but they have created that brand that makes extraordinarily great watches. Some of them, design-wise, are a bit okay.
All right.
But anyhow,
we're once again tangents. But I have two more for you.
Okay.
And the last one's going to be interesting. So next, I wanted to say Casio, but I'm going to not say Casio. I'm going to say G-Shock.
Yeah, if I say Swatch is a fashion watch, then a G-Shock is a fashion watch too.
But at the same time, you don't see swatches on military personnel, but standard issue in two categories. in I think it was the U.S. Navy SEALs. 6900 G-Shocks are still used. And then the only other flight qualified watch besides the Speedmaster was the 5600.
But I think...
So those are proper tools.
No, 100%.
So once again,
they are. I mean, they are made with
a purpose. It doesn't have to be horology. I mean, theoretically, it is horology because it's adding to the lineup of watches, right?
And technically, they are completely 100% in-house.
It is 100% in-house. I'm going to go with it's not a fashion brand,
but
they make some colorful watches.
Exactly. That's where we saying like, okay, this is a fully integrated watch brand that makes extremely complicated quartz movements, right? And technology of how they actually, even with materials, just Trantixi titanium stuff and whatever else they design, and how they actually can decorate and use titanium, different colors and all of this stuff. It's really cool stuff. But they make also fashionable watches, not fashion watches.
Once again, a Rolex is a fashionable watch.
Yeah.
So by that logic, Rolex is also a fashion watch?
If we talk about Rolex, I think we should also need to talk a bit about the whole idea of what fashion is nowadays.
Well, I think we're really blurring the lines of what a fashion watch is.
You know why I'm coming to that? Because of the whole resurgence of this whole old money, stealth wealth versus the rest, right? So somebody who is from head to toe with big Louis Vuitton and Gucci logos.
Like myself, right?
For the record.
I'm wearing a Canadian tuxedo today with the denim shirt and the denim jeans. So
yeah, so what I'm saying is that I think that's the extreme opposite of old money.
Yeah.
Old money is no brands, high value and extremely expensive things, but the things that are lasting long, that are of very, very good quality, and that don't shout other brand names around, right?
Yeah.
Rolex at the moment is a bit, or it has become, I think, a shouty brand.
It has.
And it's the opposite of a JLC, for example.
Which I'm wearing right now.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. Because I've seen it,
agree.
and this is the embodiment of a stylish watch that can be worn by people with a lot of money, and they just appreciate the design, the quality of the movement, the history of the brand, everything that's connected to it. You don't see many people buying a JLC to show off.
I did. No. But I do feel sometimes I do consciously not wear my Rolexes because of this.
It has sometimes a bitter taste. Yeah.
However, I don't feel that applies to my small Explorer. Somehow the Explorer goes under the radar. It's so small. Yeah. It's so dainty.
And also, I think some of the designs, because they are so unassuming.
Yep.
Right. They're not shiny, no polished Well,
It has a polished bezel, but not on the bracelet.
But it's not a fluted bezel or anything like that. It doesn't. It's not so. Even my Explorer 2 is something that doesn't really look like that shiny
the Explorer
object.
2 is also a fantastic experience, especially the polar dial with the black hands and the black surrounds for the indices.
I think this is when you'd have these two watches, Explorer.
Explorer 1, Explorer 2 would be a
line.
Fantastic collection, by the way.
Yeah.
Two-watch collection.
Yeah, so that you have, and that's why I think this is where that's not too assuming. That's not too show-offy. This is a bit more the watch as a tool, the watch as something that you use, that you...
So we're saying a brand, we cannot necessarily sum up a fashion watch in terms of a brand. We need to go further and look at lines within that brand. So we could say there's certain lines within Rolex that are fashion watches, and then there's certain lines that are not. And I think we could do the same thing for G-Shock, for instance. If you were talking a plain black rubber G-Shock, could be a tool. But if you're talking about a neon yellow and blue Tetris watch, it's going to be a fashion watch.
But there's the funny thing again. When I had just something in my mind, Seiko, right?
Okay.
Seiko watches, I would not say they're fashion watches. But if you look at the Seiko 5 line,
oh, they're definitely
where every week you probably have like 3 new releases.
And then on top of this, there's no more screw down crowns. There's no more water resistance. There's there's so many things that they did away with, especially that fake plastic display back that they, fake sapphire looking display case back that they use. I mean, they really ruined the SKX for me.
It's not an SKX.
And then you start looking at the collaborations.
Yeah, so many of them.
Rowing blazers. Those are fashion watches.
Yeah. And also, they have so many anime and Japanese only stuff. And it's amazing of how much, if you look at these japanselect.com, and where they have the JDM watches, the Japanese domestic market releases.
I have a JDM.
It's so amazing. And some of them are so cool. But I think, yes, that's a fashion line. That 100% now. It's not anymore what it used to be. But Seiko in itself is still an absolute fantastic watchmaker as a company. Yeah.
Okay. Let's do one more.
Okay.
AP and their new Spider-Man watch.
Yeah, very good one. So I don't know if you heard this, but there was following up from the Marvel Corporation that they're having. They released the Black Panther, and now they released the Spider-Man. And this is the full name is the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Concept Tourbillon Spider-Man, if I'm not mistaken. It's a very long name, and I think that watch, personally, I think is fantastic from a watchmaking perspective. Absolutely breathtaking. When you see the videos of how this character looks extremely three-dimensional, like he's really reaching out of the dial. You don't see this in photos. You have to see it, I think, in movement. 50 hours it takes them to make the character itself. It has incredible detail. They use all the most modern technologies, from some laser etching to hand painting and all of this stuff in etching to make this character so nice. And then the movement itself. It's this one bridge, more or less, fully skeletonized tourbillon movement that was designed for the code 1159. And they have now fully skeletonized. And it has a new movement number, but it's based on that code 1159 tourbillon movement. And it's such a cool movement and a watch. I think it's just fantastic. However, 250 pieces. One of them just got sold in Dubai for 6.2 million, I think, roughly. The piece unique that they had with a black suit Spider-Man. It's only one piece. 6.2 million. It goes to charity.
Can't roll my eyes hard enough. But
yeah, they rolled back in his head, went a few times in his skull and then came back. But the watch itself, I appreciate excellence when I see it. Would I ever buy it even if I have the money? No way. But I like that some people, with the amount of money to spend on a watch, saying, I'm sitting there as whatever, in the prime of my life with 40, 50 years old, 60 years old. I have the money and I wear a bloody comic watch because I don't give something that I beep. I don't care what people think. I'll buy a comic watch worth whatever, 200,000 Swiss francs or whatever it might be, because I don't care what other people think. And that's cool. And again, excellence. The watch is excellent. And the watchmaking is absolute something I respect. But I'm always wondering, how did Benyamas get this to the board? Because the board of AP is more conservative. It's a lot of old family members, older people.
But didn't they make the the Black Panther?
Yes.
Didn't they do an Iron Man one as well?
No, I don't think yet.
I think
no, that's still something. I think I'm sure it will come.
Yeah.
But I think Iron Man did wear one of their watches. I don't know. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. does for sure. But
there was one other one that I was thinking about, but I can't remember. One other Marvel one though. How many Marvel watches have they made?
I think it's only these two so far, if I'm not mistaken. Black Panther was the first one, and then this one is the second one.
Okay.
And I mean, look,
maybe no. Correct us if we're wrong. Once again,
250 pieces only. I mean, this is it, right? I was a tiny bit disappointed when they said that it takes them 50 hours of work for the figurine itself. I thought that was a bit low, but I think they use a lot of very, very sophisticated laser etching and manufacturing things. So 50 hours doesn't seem that bad anymore. But anyhow, how long does it take to put together a Rolex watch? Probably 1 or 2 hours, right? Because it's highly efficient and automated to a certain extent. And they take 50 hours just on a single piece.
I feel it's hideous and it devalues the brand. I honestly, I think AP has no idea what they're doing. I think they are overcorrecting. They were known as the Royal Oak brand. And because of this, now they're trying to jump back and say, no, we can do other things as well. And with the 1159 and now these Marvel watches.
But that is a Royal Oak concept.
It is a Royal Oak concept. So the whole thing, once again, the fact they're trying to show people. I actually don't mind the original Royal Oak concepts, the original two.
Yeah,
I think those were cool. But to put a Spider-Man or to put a cartoon character on the dial, I think it's just ridiculous. I mean,
no, I think it's for a brand who would have expected that? Nobody, right? And I think there's a lot of this reaction.
I'm hoping the new CEO is going to slap some sense into this company because I wouldn't be surprised if the current CEO is leaving not entirely voluntarily.
Yeah, that's something which is very interesting actually to see what will happen. The Audemars Piguet CEO has already announced, I think a year ago or so on Dubai Watch Week, he already announced that he's stepping
he was
back.
leaving. Yeah, correct.
So that was something that, But now the new appointed CEO is Ilaria Resta, half Swiss, half Italian. And she has a background in running divisions in very influential companies, Procter & Gamble and Firmenich. Firmenich is a company, the world's largest supplier of perfume ingredients in the world. And she was responsible for the perfume division or whatever, supply division. It's a chemical company, right? That's what was her last job. Everybody refers to her, Procter & Gamble, and she's doing Head & Shoulders and Pantene shampoo and stuff, or Oral-B toothpaste. What does she know about watches? But I think when you saw the statement of why Audemars Piguet thinks that she's the right person in the job, they focused only on her leadership style. They said, she is a person who has a cooperative leadership, team-focused leadership style that they think will fit very good in Audemars Piguet. So maybe that's also a bit of a push to Benyanas, who probably was a bit of a rock star, right? And
but the way he started, he took AP from the garbage heaps and brought.
Well,
AP
he made
up.
them from a 600 million revenue company to a 2 billion revenue company.
He was saying, I listened to an interview back when he used to wear a suit and tie, and now he just wears t-shirts and jeans. But back then he said that he did a tour of US and visited every single AP authorized dealer at the time. And he said half of them threw him out and said, you're the guy that's responsible for this crap that we're supposed to sell, and none of it's selling. It's not moving. And so apparently at the time, no one wanted AP.
Yeah.
And, compared to Rolex and Patek, I'm assuming AP was kind of the relegated to the back corner. And so he single-handedly saw that there was an issue here and that the dealers there was too many dealers. So he was the one that started having these boutiques, which were flagship boutiques. He single-handedly took away, I don't know how many he closed or cut up the contract at least with hundreds of authorized dealers around the world, and basically tried to reduce the number of touch points that they have.
Yeah, so I think this is now AP is basically a vertically integrated company. You cannot buy an AP at an authorized dealer anymore. That ship has sailed. Everything is now a boutique owned by AP.
Okay.
So everything is now directly Audemars Piguet, which is a very interesting way of doing things, right? It's the opposite of what Rolex is doing, only working with authorized dealers. So a very interesting approach, controlling who you sell to, right? Yourself. And you have to go through interviews to a certain extent. When I put my name down for an IP in the boutique, I was interviewed more or less, asked what I'm doing, what's my job, what is my hobbies, what other watches do I have, what car do I drive, these kind of things, right?
So if I walk in there and say, I have a Ford Focus, they're going to love me.
I'm always wondering if you're, for example, doing the same thing in New York, where most of the people, no matter how rich they are, they don't have cars.
Yeah.
You don't need one, right? And it makes no sense there. Or Singapore. Other places where just you don't really need cars. Anyhow, my point is,
the questions are different. Who knows?
I guess. How often do you take the metro, or the helicopter?
No. Which stop do you get off at? In Budapest, this is one of the things that you could always tell somebody. Depending on which stop they get off at.
Okay.
There's certain stops that are nice, and there's certain stops that you would never get off at.
Okay. Yeah. Anyhow, so I think. What the new I think you're right. The Benny Hammers did a lot for the brand, and he really resurrected it and brought it to life and into the limelight. And it's one of the most coveted brands that exist at the moment in the watch world. But I also think he might overshot a bit. Yeah, and that's why the
got
board,
a little cocky. I think,
and he said this in Dubai Watch Week in one of his panel discussions. He said, my board is not concerned of what happens in the next 3 to 5 years. They are concerned that AP should still be there in the next 100 years.
Yeah.
So they have an extremely long-term horizon, and they're privately owned. So they're not looking for the quarterly results and saying, okay, make more money, make more profit. They are really considering the long-term longevity of the brand. They are trying to make, what do you say, a legacy, right? Yeah. And I think this is a good way. And I think this new CEO is basically a consolidator, saying, okay, now we are focusing on that. However, their goal is still to make 70 to 80,000 watches in the next couple of years, yearly production. And where do you grow? I'm 100% convinced they are not making more Royal Oaks. No way. They might just move them a bit more up, more precious metal, more other things. But the growth, and I think they already announced this. I think Benny Hammers already said that. We want to make the AP ladies' watches the Birkin bag of the watch world. Okay. Because right now, I think in the watch world, you have one big player there that has...
I would say two.
Okay. One big player that has shown that female watches for women, female watches, can make you incredibly rich
Yeah.
and can make a lot of money. And that's Cartier. Cartier is the second largest watchmaker in the world now, Swiss watchmaker in the world now by revenue. Before Omega, they're behind Rolex.
Yeah.
And I'm 100% sure 50% or more than 50% are women's watches.
However, I still feel Rolex would have something similar because I think, the Rolex, the ladies' Datejust, the ladies' watches, the Yachtmasters, the small ones.
Very high percentage
OPs,
for sure. Yeah.
I think they also, but they're the only two in my mind that would sell enough ladies' watches and have the enough brand perception within the ladies' market to penetrate, that type of audience.
I think so too. I think certain other brands try with Breitling, the sportier range and all of this stuff.
How many women do you know around that are saying, I want a Breitling?
My wife has two.
Yeah, but your wife has a watch collection as well. We're talking average, the average person. My wife probably didn't know anything about watches aside from Cartier and Rolex.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. That's why I think this is where they think, okay, AP has a few watches. I've seen ladies wear IP watches, right? Some of the, the chocolate,
the small
rubber
Royal
bands
Oaks.
and these, beautiful. But I think that's still very niche. There's not too many. The brand, let's say the mind share of women in the AP range is not there.
Yep.
They are not desiring that watch that much that they would do the same that they would do for a Birkin handbag from Hermes.
Correct.
They are not killing for it.
But I don't understand this once again. Why would you want a piece of leather for the same price as,
a car, an apartment?
Yeah. And just to me, with watchmaking, there's a lot of skill and craftsmanship, and not everyone can do it. And metal parts, and it's essentially a motor.
I know
but
sounds...
for a bag, it's a piece of leather.
Yeah, but wait. I have seen the artisans of Hermes doing a handbag. Here in the Dubai Mall, they had these artisans here for a couple of weeks when they showcased their craft. And if you see, and if you talk to the people who make the scarves or design the scarves and how they're printed, and you see the person who's actually making the handle of the Hermes bags and how delicate this is and how hard it is, they have to learn it for years before they're actually making their first handle that's going to sail, right? There's a lot of craftsmanship in it. I'm not saying it's worth what it sells
90,000 US dollars.
But it definitely is exceptionally good craftsmanship. And that's why they became so famous. They're not crappy. They're fantastic. But I do understand what you're saying and saying, okay, this is a bit silly. But then on the other hand, a painting is just a painting.
Okay.
That's a piece of canvas,
all of this.
right?
It's true.
And a few colors.
And those are $30 million pieces of canvas.
Yeah, it's hard. All right. So
all right. I think that's time for us to wrap up.
Fashion watches.
Fashion watches. Once again, it's not as clear cut as you would see or you would think.
Yeah, and I think the jury is still out. What is a fashion watch, and who is actually making fashionable watches?
Exactly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. And once again, follow us on Instagram at Lume Plotters.
Yeah.
Message us, DM us, whatever you want.
And we have this new link in our descriptions everywhere. So if you want to leave us a voice message, you can do that now for free from your mobile phone or from your computer. You just click on the link, click the record button, 90 seconds. You can leave us any kind of voicemail, and we will play it here on the show in the right time, and then discuss your questions, your criticism, which you shouldn't actually have any criticism. You just send us praise and good news. No, anything you want, please.
Once again, if you look at the Instagram account, there's a link there, and you can access our website from there. And you can see this link that Ralph is referring to. It's called speakpipe.com/LumePlotters. So leave us an audio comment.
Awesome. That's it from us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.